From Toronto, Canada, The Conspiracy Show with Richard Syrett.
Welcome to the Audio Imaginarium. Come on inside, hang your cloak on a peg, grab a stool, and come warm yourself by the fire. Warm yourself by the fire? It's July, for crying out loud. Anyway, there are stories to be told, and you are among friends. Welcome to The Conspiracy Show. My name is Richard Syrett. Jason Quitt and Bob Mitchell, co-authors of Forbidden Knowledge, Revelations of a Multidimensional Time Traveler, are standing by. And we'll get to that conversation in just moments. Let me remind you, first of all, I encourage you to get on up to the website, strangeplanet.ca. Strangeplanet.ca. That's your portal, not only to this radio show, but to the television program and some other projects that I've got brewing. And while you're there, on the landing page, you can click on the radio page, and that'll get you into this show. And then you can click on the blue member button on the left-hand side, and that's where you join, become a member. It's fast, easy, and best of all, free, my favorite words. And that allows you access to member-only areas, like the past audio archives. And that allows you to listen to shows going all the way back. I think we go back as far as the summer of 2012. So that's like 4 years now worth of past shows that you can wade through, and you can listen every night and catch up. And also you can have access to the past guest info, where you'll find all the information on past guests, links to their websites, their books, and so forth. There's even a book club, all sorts of great stuff. It's definitely worth taking a few minutes and signing up. All right, how often have you looked at life and thought there must be more than just this? Well, my next guest, Jason Quitt, and his co-author, Bob Mitchell, they're living proof that there is. You're going to find answers to some of humankind's greatest questions in their new book, Forbidden Knowledge, Revelations of a Multidimensional Time Traveler. And as a multidimensional time traveler, Jason has experienced the past, the present, and the future, from ancient Egypt and Atlantis to our possible pre- and post-apocalyptic future. He's been a witness to our unrecorded history. All right, let's introduce Bob. Bob Mitchell is a Canadian author and journalist who covered crime and sports for the Toronto Star for more than 35 years. He's a field investigator for MUFON, based in Ontario, and an executive with MUFON Canada. Bob is also co-founder of Toronto Newswire Services at Tor Newswire. Jason Quitt is a graduate of the Institute of Energy Wellness and a student of Algonquin Shamanism. Has been training and working with many teachers, shamans, and traditional healers from around the world. Jason is also the author and teacher of Egyptian Postures of Power and the Yosef Codes, Methods of Personal Healing and Practice. As a channeler of universal and dimensional energies of healing, he combines these methods and modalities of energy medicine, shamanism, and dowsing to assist those on their personal paths of healing and enlightenment. Jason Quitt, Bob Mitchell, welcome to The Conspiracy Show. How are you?
I'm feeling a little tired, but from last night's show, but we're raring to go. And for people who think I'm really old because of that 35 years at the Star, just let them know that I started when I was 8 years old. So.
Exactly. Yes, you were a prodigy.
I was just out of the womb and started to learn how to type really early in life. So.
That's right. You came out and you had ink-stained hands, ink-stained baby hands.
And I had a fedora on already. Cigar on one side, and just.
Welcome, Bob. Bob is alluding to we did Coast to Coast last night together, so and we had so much fun. We're going to do it all over again.
Yeah.
Jason, how are you?
I'm very good, and last night was very good as well, and I'm happy to be back again.
I'm delighted to have you here on the program. All right, let me, for those who missed last night's 2-hour extravaganza, this is kind of an interesting chance meeting that the two of you had. First of all, let me set the table. A couple of weeks ago in Brantford, my hometown, Brantford, Ontario, we had the Alien Cosmic Expo, and I was honored to be asked to moderate a panel of some of the top UFO researchers, disclosure advocates, just a who's who. The Honorable Paul Hellyer, Travis Walton, Stephen Bassett, Grant Cameron, Nick Pope. I'm probably going to forget somebody. However, Richard Dolan, can't forget Richard Dolan, of course. And then they were facing off against a panel of mainstream reporters and journalists, and this is the first of its kind in Canada. And the adjudicators of the panel were, of course, our very good friend Victor Vigiani from Zealand News Network, who is a regular on this program, and the aforementioned Bob Mitchell. Bob, just give me your thoughts on how that panel went. I thought it was a raving success.
I would agree 100%. It was a raving success for the people that were there, and the publicity that happened that was generated afterwards. The people who were the journalists on the panel, they could have been. I don't think they could have asked any better questions had they been the top executives at CNN or CBC or CTV or ABC. These were not well-known names, but they certainly came up with questions that were right outside the box. I mean, every one of them had something that was interesting and intriguing, and they received some intriguing answers back. So in that sense, it was great. I said before I was very disappointed that the mainstream journalists didn't at least want to come to this event to cover it, but that's the way it's always been, and I guess until if something really happens, and it has to happen in the United States, I must add, because I don't think any Canadian newspaper would touch it unless it appears on CNN or on an AP Newswire. But when that happens, they'll be sorry they didn't come out to this event, because they could have made a lot of contacts that they would have been able to just pick up the phone and call if they ever needed a comment. Now, if something like amazing happens, they won't know who to call. So.
Precisely. And for those... Exactly. Well, and I should point out that Tara McIsaac, who writes for the Epoch Times, and you've probably seen the newspaper stand on the sidewalks in Toronto, and it's in many, many countries and in many, many languages. And Tara writes the Beyond Science column for Epoch Times, and she's written at least one a major article on the event. And so if you didn't get to the Alien Cosmic Expo and you want to find out what happened, just check out Tara McIsaac at Epoch Times Beyond Science column. It's online, and some really nuanced, interesting articles that she's written about that.
And you know what, Richard? What has struck me was kind of amazing is that I think it was maybe less than a month before our ET hearing, but there was that famous news conference at the White House where a couple reporters from the New York Times chastised the president's PR guy for not giving a straight answer on the alien question. And I thought, boy, they're really starting to check in on this, and perhaps somebody from the New York Times would have seen this as an opportunity to get more information. But as far as I know, nothing ever got written in the New York Times about ours. But
no, we just keep running into that glass ceiling. And it does, I don't want to belabor the point, but I remember when Edgar Mitchell was in the UK, and I think he was over there when he first started talking about he's talked to top Pentagon people and so forth, and aliens are real and all of this, and there was quite a firestorm for about 12 hours, and then absolutely no follow-up after. It's almost, it's absurdist theater when you think of it. All right.
In Europe, they take this more seriously than North America.
Of course, absolutely. Yes, they do. One day, our day will come. Now, speaking of the Alien Cosmic Expo in Brantford, it was there about a year ago, Jason. It was your first time, I think, at an Alien Cosmic Expo, because this was not up until recently sort of your forte. I mean, ancient Egyptology and past lives and astral travel. You haven't been part of the sort of the UFO ET arena, if you will. But you show up a year ago, and you have this rather interesting encounter with Bob Mitchell.
Yes, and, when I went there and I gave my talk, I was actually quite surprised because the room was actually packed, and a lot of the main speakers that were headlining last year came to watch me speak, and they all came up to me afterwards and thanked me for giving the talk that I did, and it really made me comfortable and accepted there. And Bob came up to me after that talk and asked me if I was interested in writing a book with him about this subject, which is about past lives, outer body experience, many topics in conspiracy and aliens. And it just so happens that about a month prior to this event, I had something very traumatic happen to me where I got very sick. And that episode, I'll say that I almost died a month before the Alien Cosmic Expo. And it really got me thinking about, I think it's time to tell people my truth, talk about who I am and what my story is. And because basically I've been hiding most of this my whole life, and I was very fearful in coming out and telling a lot of these stories. So it was almost like the universe just brought me and Bob together right when I made the decision that I wanted to come forward and write this book.
And on the surface, Bob and Jason, it seems like kind of an odd pairing because, Bob, you've written a number of books on UFOs and ETs and the alien abductions and these sorts of things. But Jason is coming at it from an entirely different angle. Astral projections and. Yeah. So what caused you to think I got to write a book with this guy?
Truthfully, the very first few words that came out of his mouth when he had his talk, he said that he came into this life with pre-birth memories, and in fact, chose his parents. And when I heard that, I thought, there's got to be a story there, and I want to tell it. And I didn't really hear much of after that. I was just, in my mind, I was twirling things saying, this is going to be a really interesting book if what he says really happened, and there's got to be a lot more to that. And he's talking about ancient past lives in Egypt, and I'm figuring, well, this all is kind of connected. And at the time, I didn't even know the book would even involve aliens or abductions or anything like that. I just thought it was just a new avenue that I was going to take. All my stories that I had written before and dealt with, people's personal experiences, their encounter with aliens, their abductions on spaceships, and not really out-of-body experiences that I understood at the time to be out-of-body experiences. But when I heard Jason's story, I thought, well, this is going to be a completely different book. I had no idea that aliens were even going to be part of this book. I just thought it was going to be about past lives and reincarnation and then out-of-body experiences. But it's interesting when Jason said a few minutes ago that he was fearful about coming out and telling this story. Almost everybody that I had interviewed for my other books about their personal encounters all had that same sense. They had kept these dark secrets with them all their lives, and these people were now in their 50s and 60s, and suddenly they found me for some strange reason, and also for some strange reason they felt comfortable enough to tell me their deepest, darkest secrets.
Okay, Bob, I've got to jump in here. We'll take a time out. Jason Quitt, Bob Mitchell. Forbidden Knowledge, Revelations of a Multidimensional Time Traveler, right here on The Conspiracy Show. Don't go away.
The truth will set you free, but first, it will really tick you off. You're listening to The Conspiracy Show with Richard Serra.
We are back with Bob Mitchell, Jason Quitt, co-authors of Forbidden Knowledge, Revelations of a Multidimensional Time Traveler. And Bob, we were talking about what, I don't want to say possessed you, but why you made this decision that you were going to write a book with Jason.
That's a good word to use because everybody says that Jason and I were meant to meet. There was some synchronicity involved.
Well, the other thing was, Jason, when you came into the Alien Cosmic Expo a year ago in Brantford, you saw Bob was sitting in the hallway and he had his, was it Incursions, one of his books? Intrusions. And you saw on the cover, there's a picture of kind of an insectoid alien. And what did you say, Jason, when you saw that?
I walked right up to Bob, and I smiled at him, and I pointed at the cover of his book, and I said, I know that guy.
You know that guy? You've seen that guy?
I've seen that guy. And, that's my first introduction to Bob, and, I guess it's just also synchronicity that he was the first person that I saw when I walked through that door.
And I got to tell you, Jason is an imposing figure in the sense that he's 6'5", and I'm 5'9", and I'm sitting down next to Stanton Friedman, so I'm already, pretty low, and I'm staring up at this pretty big guy who says he's seen a very big insectoid mantis being, and one of the thoughts that's running through my mind is, I'm looking at a mantis.
Right.
He seemed to have the same features, and little did I know that throughout our meetings and interviews is that one of the things Jason has stressed, and he's not actually the first person that has told me this, but reincarnation takes place in many forms, and we might come back in one lifetime as a human, or we might come back in another lifetime as an alien being. So it's quite possible that mantids, some of us have been mantids in previous lives.
There's something for people to wrap their head around and chew on for a while.
Because everybody who's had a mantis experience, and I have not found one person yet that's had a negative experience.
Oh, is that right?
But absolutely love for these creatures, and they feel love back from them. So there's got to be some connection there. In fact, they all feel that there has been a familiarity at some point in some distant past lives. So who knows? Jason might have been a mantis at some point.
All right. Well, Jason, let me ask you how this works, because, Bob, I'm guessing that for the most part, most of the experiences that you've covered, these people are experiencing either an abduction or a sighting in the third dimension.
That's what I originally thought, and I think most of them are, but there's a whole other area to explore.
Exactly, and that's where you come in, Jason, because when you say a multidimensional traveler, you're talking about astral travel. So when you say that you saw that insectoid on the cover of his book, and you said, I've met that guy, I know that guy, this was on an astral plane, right? Explain what that means and how that happens.
Sure. So it all has to do with going to sleep. And many people think, you go to sleep and you dream. But there's other states of consciousness when you go to sleep. And one of those states of consciousness is outer body experience or astral travel. So instead of going to sleep and dreaming, we're consciously actually shaking ourselves out of the physical body and entering into another dimension. We can call it the astral world or fourth dimension or any dimension, really. And many people that are sensitive or gifted, they can feel or sense or even see these beings walking into rooms when most people wouldn't have that sensibility as to they can't experience those higher senses. So I can feel a being, let's say, walk into a room, but I can't see them with my physical eyes. It is only when I leave my body, suddenly they're right in front of you, clear as day, like just a normal person is just standing in front of you. So these experiences are extra-dimensional or multi-dimensional experiences.
And when did it happen first for you? I mean, I know you have a remembrance or a memory, rather, of being a baby and choosing your parents before you were actually incarnated. But in terms of astral projections or astral travel and meeting these entities, when did that begin?
I think it's been happening my whole life because I have very early memories of things coming into my room in the middle of the night and really scaring me. But, you'd run to your parents and tell them these things, and they just say, you're having a nightmare. So I just kind of passed these off as nightmares. It was only later in life, in my early 20s, when, you have that adult or young adult mind and sensibility where you're not dreaming, and then you start remembering, okay, I used to do this when I was a child, and it started to come back in full force around my early 20s.
And your first encounter with an insectoid, can you tell me about that?
It's very strange. For people that experience these things, they'll understand what I'm saying, but these beings have no concept of sleep. So I'm sleeping in bed, and suddenly you'll feel a presence, and you open your eyes, and it's almost like there's a face an inch from your face.
Lovely. That's great to wake up to, isn't it?
So what's your first reaction? Your first reaction is, I think I've hit a couple with my pillow.
I'd say the insectoid got off lucky.
Right, because your first reaction is fear, and you're completely scared, and they don't understand why you're scared. So my first experience with a mantid is just me opening my eyes and have this big mantis face about an inch from mine, and getting very scared because you're getting woken up from a dead sleep and not expecting that. And the first experience, the mantid actually tried to speak to me, but it was speaking to me in its language, which I could not understand anything. And I just calmly replied back to this being that, I'm very sorry, I can't understand you. Can you please speak English to me? And it actually looked very confused and turned around and walked out of the room.
Really? So no telepathic ability with the mantis. That's interesting.
No, not with me at this first encounter.
Bob, does that square with people you've talked to that have had encounters with the mantis?
Well, the people that I've talked to, their encounters with the mantis, well, they will swear that it has been in the physical form. Although one person that I talked to it's clearly in the out of body form, but they all had telepathic communication. The only way I can think of why this creature was confused about Jason not understanding what he or she was talking about was that he or she knew that Jason at some point had been a mantis and couldn't figure out why he didn't understand what they were talking about.
Ah, that's interesting.
So maybe they thought they got the wrong person and they just left. Because, but Jason is a little different than most people. I mean, he has control over his out-of-body experiences where a lot of people, it just sort of happens to them.
Right.
It may be something to do with that, too.
When did you start to develop the control over your astral travels, Jason?
I would say it took a long time to control them, and it was not easy at first. So my first experience, I was having sleep paralysis, and it was happening almost every night to me. I'd be frozen in my body, and I couldn't wake myself up, and I would feel a presence walking around my bedroom, which didn't feel too good, was quite frightening.
Sounds like the old hag syndrome, which is fairly common.
Fairly common, yeah. And one night I just couldn't take it, and I just shook myself to wake up, and I shook so hard that I popped out of my body. And as I rose out of my body, I can see myself laying in the bed, still frozen. And when I looked at the foot of my bed, there was a very tall being. His head almost touched the ceiling, and I think I have about 8-foot ceilings. And it just looked like a black mass, like a big black shadow. And at that point, I just thought I was dead. I thought I just, left my body, and there's the Grim Reaper standing there waiting for me.
Mm-hmm.
So that pretty much scared me because I wasn't expecting that to happen, let alone see what was walking around my room. And I got sucked back in my body and woke up. But ever since that experience, that's never happened to me since. But what has happened is it's almost like a door has been opened for me. And I learned how to put myself into sleep paralysis. And the only way I could explain it is going to sleep, but keeping your mind awake.
Right.
And once the body's asleep, it's almost like this, it just shuts off, and there's this numbness. And then with the mind, you just kind of shake your inner body out, and then you pop out and you're just kind of floating around the room.
Now, in certain, we're coming up on a break in a couple minutes. We'll start the conversation now, and we'll pick it up on the other side. But in you detail in the book how you were essentially abducted. I mean, these were astral abductions, which is kind of a new phrase. Mm-hmm. Explain how that worked.
Well, I'll just say you're sleeping. You know, you're having a regular sleep. You're dreaming, and then suddenly something sucks you right out of your body. So you're abruptly woken up from your dream state, but you're not getting woken up in the physical. You're getting pulled out of your body in the astral. And there would be beings standing in the room, and they looked like, the only way I could describe it is shadows. I could not see a form. They just looked like shadows, but humanoid shadows. And they would pull my astral body out, shoot me up into outer space. I could see the planet below me, and then they would direct me to a point on the planet, and then they would drop me back down and drop me off at that location, and they would just kind of leave me there to experience the environment that they're leaving me. And I soon realized that these environments that they're dropping me is Earth in different timelines. So it was almost like not only astral abductions, but astral time travel experiences.
And the one of the first places you got dropped off, and you believe this was Earth at a different timeline. It's in its future, presumably, where the planet was essentially rendered to ash. Yes,
everything was scorched and burnt. The ground was almost like a dark brown red, and the sky was very dark as well, very red. And you can see the trees in the distance, and they were all just cinders. And then they took my consciousness down into a bunker system to show me a person that was trying to survive down there. But it looked like this person was suffering greatly. So whatever was happening or did happen, this bunker did not protect this person. And that was the first experience of this astral time travel that I've been on.
That must have been traumatic beyond words. That must have taken a while to recover from.
Yes, and it was. It's a very strange experience because it's very real. I would say that when you're out of your body, you're using different senses, and everything is heightened. So not only am I there and I can see the environment, but I can feel what's going on. I could like smell the air, feel the air.
Right. So it's not like looking dispassionately at a painting or a photograph. You're experiencing it. You're feeling the wind in your face and so forth. Listen, I've got to remarkable. I have to take a time out. We'll come back and we'll continue to talk about astral abductions and the revelations of a multidimensional time traveler. And that would be Jason Quitt, along with co-author Bob Mitchell, right here on The Conspiracy Show. Do not go away.
When in doubt, blame the government. You're listening to The Conspiracy Show.
We are back with Bob Mitchell and Jason Quitt. Forbidden Knowledge, Revelations of a Multidimensional Time Traveler is the book. I forgot to mention this off the top, but are we going to do the big announcement towards the end of the show, gentlemen?
Sure.
Excellent. Bob and Jason have another project coming down the pipe, and they're going to share that with you. And let me tell you right now, you want to stick around to the end because, well, it relates to disclosure. I'll tell you that much. And this one is a Lollapalooza. If Bob and Jason are correct, this one is going to cause just a tremendous uproar in the UFO disclosure community and beyond, more than just UFOs. Anyway, stick around for that. Now, Jason, you were detailing one of your astral abductions where you're left on or taken and dropped on planet Earth sometime in our future. Was there any information communicated to you by these entities that took you, what this timeline was and what happened? Was it Planet X? Was it nuclear apocalypse? What happened?
Actually, there was never communication with these beings. It was almost just like they just wanted me to observe something. And once I experienced it, or once I observed it, they would come back down, pick me back up. I'd go back into outer space, and they get shot back down into my bedroom, into my body, and wake up. And that's how it happened all those times.
And how frequent was this? Was this every night, every week, every month? How frequent?
When it first started, it happened, I would say, every month. It would be a big time travel experience. And then between the time travel experiences, I would have, I would say, alien intrusions or astral entities or past life visions or dreams that would come to me. So, but I would say the time travel experiences were the most dramatic of all these experiences.
Most people would lose their minds, Jason, if that were to happen. Where did you find the strength to just continue to live a so-called normal life?
Actually, I have no idea because I really couldn't tell anybody. I have the logic in the sense that I know that if I open my mouth, I'd probably be locked up. And I did actually start to talk to my friends about some of the stuff I was being taught. And just the looks that my friends gave me, I kind of just kept it to myself afterwards. So it was a very taboo subject, and that's why I kind of just hid it for so long. But the most dramatic one that I went on was getting dropped off at this prison camp for children. And it was, they dropped me back off, and it was almost like an open-air prison with big walls of concrete with barbed wire, and you can see the sky. And it was the same sky. It was this red sky, dark red sky. It almost looked like the sky was burnt or something terrible had happened to the sky. But there were kids between ages of, I would say, 5 to 13, and they weren't wearing any prison uniforms. They were just wearing regular clothing, and there were armed guards there, and there was a tank in this open field that was enclosed by this prison, and I was basically witnessing a massacre, which was very traumatic for me, because, you're just getting kind of dropped off in the middle of it and having to watch all this happening. And when I came back from that experience, I was white as a ghost. I was very sick, and I was like shaking for a week.
These were children between the ages of what, 5 and 13?
Yeah, about 5 and 13, I would guess. So small kids, and people have shell shock or post-traumatic stress. Like I experienced that after coming back from that experience, and I was actually just praying and begging, I'd never want to do this again. Don't take me. I don't want these abilities. I don't want any of this to happen to me ever again. And that's when the experience started to change. And when these beings would come to me and take me out of my body, they actually started to speak to me, and they started to teach me. And the first things they talked to me about, and it was telepathic, so you would see kind of this being in the room, which just looked like a shadow, but you could hear their voice speaking in your mind, and they started to tell me about, the food and the water is compromised, I have to eat better and drink better water, and there's electromagnetic pollution that's causing all these effects in your body. And basically all the information they started to tell me boiled down to, you have to heal yourself. That was the most important message that they would continually tell me, is you have to heal yourself before you could do what you do in this world or go on your path. You have to heal.
All right, Jason, I'm going to step in here. We'll take a time out, come back. Jason Quitt, Bob Mitchell, and the book is Forbidden Knowledge, Revelations of a Multi-Dimensional Time Traveler. Stay with us.
Corporations, governments, and sometimes entire civilizations. What goes up must come down, and it lands on The Conspiracy Show with Richard Sarrett.
We are back with Bob Mitchell and Jason Quitt, and we are taking this for the full 2 hours. So just a note to the affiliates along the line that don't carry us into the second hour, or at least on consecutive hours, that we will be continuing on with Bob and Jason afterwards. All right. So, Bob, this whole idea of astral abductions, when he started talking about this to you, and when you heard his presentation discussing these things happening not in the third dimension, but in the fourth dimension, did the lights start to go off for you in terms of your previous experiences with abductees and so forth?
Yeah, absolutely. I started to think that maybe the abduction that were happening all around the world, and you got to remember, this is not just something that happens to a few people. There's millions of people around the world that claim to have abduction experiences. And I started thinking that so many of them end up telling people that they're in their bed, they suddenly find themselves flying through the air, either up straight through the ceiling or through the walls, and they find themselves on a spaceship or in an underground base or somewhere like that. And yet their spouses never say they ever left the bed. The kids come into the room sometimes, and they never see that mommy or daddy's left the bed. Everything seems normal, yet to them they have had this incredible experience. So when Jason started talking about astral abductions and with the consciousness, because when you're in the astral world, you're seeing 360 degrees, but you don't have a sense of a body. You just know everything. So I started thinking, well, perhaps that's what's happening to a lot of these people, that they're not physically being taken up to the ceiling of their roof, because that seems to be quite impossible in a third dimensional world. But in the astral world, that's quite possible. You can go through doors. Matter doesn't exist the way that we see it to our eyes right now. And so perhaps when they're being abducted, their consciousness is actually somewhere else, and whatever the entities are doing or trying to get information from you or even tapping into your psychology, they're doing it in an astral world. They're not physically harming your body. That's not to say that there aren't some third-dimensional abductions, because I think they are, and some of them end up leaving marks. But the vast majority of people don't have any marks, don't have any anything to say that it actually happened, except they know it happened. And a lot of people say, well, where's the proof? And they can't give them proof. So to me, it started making a lot of sense that this is what's going on. People are being abducted in a very strange way, and it's an astral abduction. So I think most abductions take place that way.
Right. I mean, it certainly explains a lot, passing through solid objects and so forth. However, we mentioned the Alien Cosmic Expo, and of course Travis Walton was there. That's got to be third dimensional.
That's a physical something that happened.
What about Betty and Barney Hill?
I think that was physical too.
Yeah.
But you got to remember that happened in the late '60s. I think both of them.
Yeah.
I think
Travis was 1975.
75. And a lot has changed since then. And there is some thought that whatever the aliens were doing, they're not doing anymore. And that would also explain why there has been really a lack of people coming forward in modern times. By modern times, I mean the last decade, say.
That's a good point.
So I'm not saying that they're not still happening, but if they are happening, they're happening in the astral world. They don't need to take the physical body anymore.
Well, there are a couple of things that come to mind there. First of all, it's interesting. One of the indicators often of some sort of an abduction is the missing time. But if it's fourth dimensional and you're outside of time and space, then there shouldn't be a time gap.
I don't think there is for that.
Right.
If there's a physical, there is still.
Exactly. The other thing is, if we're dealing with entities on an astral plane, does that mean that they are, in fact, of this, that they're not of this universe? They're not extraterrestrial, they're interdimensional. Either of you can jump in on that one.
Well, I believe they're interdimensional.
Right. So we're not, in these cases, Jason, where you encounter the insectoids or these other entities, we're not talking about someone from the Sagittarius, constellation, or from, Orion.
Actually, we are.
Oh, okay.
We are. We have to think of it this way. We reside in a body on this physical Earth, but we also have an interdimensional body. We are multi-dimensional beings. So we can actually leave this body and travel in that form to other places. So I've had experiences in the astral, or I'll just say dimensionally, where beings from other planetary systems, let's say Sagittarius. I've met reptilians from Sagittarius, and they would come astrally or dimensionally, not in a physical sense. So for them to communicate to me on Earth, we could do that in this dimensional world. So many of these beings have multi-dimensional capabilities. So they could reside in a physical body on a physical planet, but could also reside outside of that in their multi-dimensional consciousness forms.
And I think they prefer the conscious form. Wouldn't you agree, Jason?
Well, I mean, you don't have to travel in a spaceship. You can just go there just by thought.
Well, that solves another problem, doesn't it, Bob, in terms of, what the debunkers say? Well, there's no, the closest star system is X number of light years away, and in order for them, they'd have to travel 1,000 years at the speed of light, and Einstein, counter to Einstein's theory of relativity, yada, yada, yada. If we're talking about astral travel, it's instantaneous, it's all done with consciousness, and that solves that problem.
It solves that problem, although we're going to solve the other problem in our new book. But I just think that Jason has told me many times that when he's in the astral plane, it seems more real than this physical existence. So I have to think that the entities that have mastered this feel the same way, that it's almost like a bothersome thing for them to have to appear in a physical form.
Right.
And if they do, a lot of people aren't going to like them. So they'd rather come to you in a conscious form where they're actually meeting humans, per se, who have some kind of understanding of who they are when they see them in this kind of form.
And you mentioned the reptoids, and we often read about or hear about encounters with reptoids that are not pleasant. These are perhaps, among the nastiest ETs that people, talk about in terms of encounters. But you've had sort of both kinds of experiences with reptoids, haven't you?
Yes. And, let's just say that, thankfully, I've had more contact with the nice guys.
But just like mankind, there are good humans and bad humans.
Okay, so are we talking about two separate sort of reptoid civilizations, or are we talking about a reptoid civilization, but there are bad actors and there are good actors?
Actually, both. Because I would say that there's many reptoid civilizations across the universe. Some of them very peaceful, very enlightened, and some of them not. So, I learned very early that this planet in particular has had a history with not so nice ones, and there's other alien or entity beings, even multidimensional beings or astral beings that are very much involved on planet Earth, but most people have no awareness of that. They don't understand that these beings have been with us since our inception.
Right.
They've always been here.
Well, we have, of course, the legends of reptoid species living below the city of Los Angeles, for example. And then we have stories of or sightings of craft that appear to be coming out of the center of the earth or descending into the ocean to some subterranean lair. So is this the reptoid civilization that is extant on planet Earth of which you speak?
There is. There's many more, actually, of other species. But if we just want to talk about the reptilians, they've been here much longer than us. And I would say that if you look at the human beings from a historical perspective, it's almost like we came and took over their planet. Yeah.
Begs a question when you're dealing with these entities on an astral plane, and thank goodness, most of your encounters have been peaceful. But what happens if you are attacked on an astral plane? Let's say can you be killed on the astral plane? And if so, then what happens to you in the third dimension?
Okay. I wouldn't say you can be killed, but I can say that there are beings that could connect to you on that level and stay connected to you and influence you in the physical. And some of them can even pull you out of your body and take your body over. So this is where it gets into the religious aspects of possession.
Right.
So this is happening dimensionally. And there are some pretty nasty beings out there. And they're attracted to you for a very simple thing. They're attracted to you in what you carry with you. So they're attracted to your emotions, and they're attracted to your thought forms, because what you feel and what you think actually creates energy dimensionally. And these beings, they can almost feed off of that energy. So to go into the astral or to go into these dimensions, it's actually quite dangerous.
Sure.
Because when you're leaving from a human body that has all these wounds and karma and, stuff from our ancestry, when we bring that dimensionally, it's almost like we're going to be pulled where we resonate to. So if we're carrying pretty dark things, we're going to go to some pretty dark places. And when we come back to the physical body, we actually bring residue of that back with us.
The silver cord, when your astral body leaves your physical body, is that just a legend or
I've never seen a silver cord. I just know that it's almost like waking up from a dream. It's like when you got to get back to your body, it's like you're just back in your body. It's almost like an instant thing.
All right, but Jason and Bob, stay put, and we're going to wrap up this hour. And for those down the line, our affiliates that are taking us into the next hour, Jason and Bob will stay with us. In the meantime, let me remind you once again, the website, your portal to the Conspiracy Show, strangeplanet.ca. That's a landing page, and then from there you can go every which way but loose. You can go to the radio page, the TV page, the live events page. And also, please say hello on Twitter, @RichardSarrett, @RichardSarrett, S as in Simon, Y because I love you, RETT. Say hello, and as always, follow the truth.
The Conspiracy Show with Richard Serrett.
Hey, thanks for inviting me into your home, your long-haul truck, your taxi cab, RV camper, that greasy spoon just off the interstate. and your cabin in the woods. This is The Conspiracy Show. My name is Richard Serra. Congratulations, you've found us. And a big hello to all of you listening in on our app, the Conspiracy Show app. Free download from iTunes and Google Play. All of you listening in on one of our growing list of affiliates. We're up to about 35 now on both sides of the border. So we hope to keep that going. All right, part 2 of my conversation with co-authors Bob Mitchell and Jason Quitt. The book is called Forbidden Knowledge, Revelations of a Multidimensional Time Traveler. The multidimensional time traveler, of course, would be Jason Quitt. And Bob Mitchell, no stranger, of course, to the UFO, ET, and disclosure arena. And Bob was the adjudicator at a recent historic a disclosure panel at the Alien Cosmic Expo in Brantford, where we had a panel of the top UFO researchers and disclosure advocates: Stephen Bassett, Grant Cameron, Richard Dolan, Stanton Friedman, the Honorable Paul Hellyer, Travis Walton, and Nick Pope, squaring off against a panel of mainstream journalists who acquitted themselves quite nicely and asked incredibly nuanced, sophisticated questions. And it was at the Alien Cosmic Expo 1 year prior that Bob Mitchell and Jason Quitt met and hit it off and immediately decided to work together and write a book. Bob is a Canadian author, journalist who covered crime and sports for the Toronto Star for more than 35 years. He's a field investigator for MUFON based in Ontario and an executive with MUFON Canada. He's also co-founder of Toronto Newswire Services at Tor Newswire. Jason Quitt is a graduate of the Institute of Energy Wellness and a student of Algonquin Shamanism. He's been training and working with many teachers, shamans, traditional healers from around the world. He's also the author and teacher of Egyptian Postures of Power and the Yosef Codes, Methods of Personal Healing and Practice. As a channeler of universal and dimensional energies of healing, he combines these methods and modalities of energy medicine, shamanism, and dowsing to assist those on their own personal paths of healing and enlightenment. And previously, in the previous hour, we were talking about your astral travels, Jason. We were talking about a phenomenon known as astral abduction, where you are taken while you are in this state against your will and often dropped off back on Earth, but in a different timeline, the future. And let's face it, the future not looking particularly rosy. In one case, you were dropped on the planet and it had been burnt to an ash. Another incident, you were dropped off and it appeared to be some sort of a concentration camp for small children, and you witnessed just something too horrific even for words, the slaughter of innocents. Let's just leave it at that. In another astral projection, or was this an astral abduction and you were dropped off in the year 2700? Tell me about that.
No, it was different. This happened years after. The first experiences with the time travel was about 10 years ago. Actually, more than 10 years ago now. Almost 15 years ago. And this one to 2700 was more recent. And a lot of these journeys now, it's not like I'm being pulled out of my body. It's just, it's almost like I'll go to sleep and suddenly my consciousness will be taken somewhere. It's completely comfortable, and it's more like a learning experience. So one of the latest ones, I think it happened last November, and that was to the year around 2700 is what they said. And it's almost like I'd go there consciously, and I would have a being speaking telepathically in my mind, explaining what I'm seeing. So it's almost like I'll be projected there, and I would get to see certain scenes in certain places, and almost like a story. And it will be a story that's given to me telepathically. And what they showed me was that in our future, I think this is very far in our future, so not to worry, but there was a war between two alien species for the control of Earth. And they showed me one of these species, and the only way I could describe them is the ant people. Mm-hmm. And I know that many ancient traditions speak of the ant people, especially the Hopi Indians.
That's right.
And when I saw these beings, it's probably the best description I could think of. It's the first thought that popped into my mind was, this looks like an ant-man.
Right.
And they also showed me that these ant people were known in our past, and they built these step pyramids. Also, that after this war took place, it was decided that there would be no government system, and that the entire world would be run by an artificial intelligence which was integrated into everything. It was integrated into the human mind, the human body. It was integrated into all technologies and even the buildings. So it was almost like a smart building.
Right. The Internet of Everything, which is here now.
So I hear. But this was something very advanced and different. It's almost like, let's say you walk into a building, and as you walk into the building with your mind, you can have a conversation with the building, like, oh, what's the weather today? What's going on in the news around the world? Like, you can just talk to the building, and the building will answer you in your mind.
Right. I mean, it does sound eerily familiar to things that Stephen Hawking is warning about. This, the singularity, the robot apocalypse. Some are perceiving the rise of artificial intelligence as the existential threat to mankind. But you're saying that this will not come into fruition. At least was the timeline 2700?
Yeah, it was 2700 when I saw this future.
Right.
But I got a sense even then that there was something wrong. Like this was not the right way of living. And I was also kind of told that this type of progression has happened on many other planets before. Some with very, I would say, robot apocalypse, almost like Terminator. So it has happened before in other places. Will it happen here? I don't know. I didn't see that.
Bob, this whole concept of astral abductions, and which offers maybe a more plausible explanation for what is happening with these ET intrusions and so forth, because it does answer, as we discussed, it answers a lot of the questions about how are they able to transit these huge distances. Well, if it's done at a conscious level, astral projection, that explains a lot. But how is this, not only your book, but also this new approach, if I can call it that, to the whole ET UFO issue, how is this playing to the UFO ET community? I mean, is this causing any debate? Is it are people on side with it?
Some of the people that I've written about, they're not too happy that I have said that I think some of their experiences are happening in the astral plane and not in the real third-dimensional here and now. And that's fine, because I think, their experiences may have been the ones that happened in the here and now. And again, they happened, when they were in their 20s and 30s and 40s, and now they're in their 60s. So I have no problem with that. They just, seem to think that it can't possibly be true. On the other hand, I've had people that I've written about who, when I wrote the story, I wrote it as if it was happening in the physical plane, and yet when I went back to ask them a simple question afterwards was that when they were on the slab of medical equipment, did they actually see themselves? And when they thought about it, they didn't. they saw all around them, they saw in front of them, they saw the beings, but they weren't conscious of their own physical body. They absolutely remember everything, but now they're starting to rethink their own mind about, what it was that happened to them. So I think it's kind of split right now, but I've had lots of people come up to me and say, you've got it dead on. That's what's happening. I think both are happening, and I'm quite willing to accept that both are happening. I just think this gives another ulterior possibility. I guess.
Right. Another thing that has occurred to me as I'm listening to both of you and discussions about how this is happening on an astral plane, and it's something that I've heard Grant Cameron talk about and others, but Grant came immediately to mind, and he's had conversations with individuals who are believed to have been part of Majestic 12, and one of them, I believe, was a professor at, I'm not sure if it was Princeton. You may know who I'm referring to, Bob. His name doesn't come to me. But he also heard the same thing from, I'm not sure if it was Ben Rich, but the common denominator was what they told Grant is, if you want to understand how UFOs get here, if you want to understand UFO propulsion, you have to understand ESP.
ESP. Is ESP just another part of astral projection? I don't know.
Well, I don't know. I think there may be a connection because astral projection certainly sounds a lot to me like remote viewing.
Yes.
And I just came back from the San Jose, California area, and Russell Targ. I spent an afternoon with Russell, who lives in Palo Alto, and Russell was the co-founder of at Stanford Research Institute from the, I guess, late 70s to the mid 90s, and that's where they, along with Ingo Swann and Hal Puthoff and Pat Price, they developed the remote viewing program and studied it. And I mean, remote viewing certainly is very closely tied to ESP. So maybe I'm out on a limb here. I'm just wondering if that's what Majestic 12, this individual, and Ben Rich or whoever it was from Skunkworks were alluding to when they talked about what you need to understand when it comes to UFO propulsion is ESP.
It could. Well, a lot of people think that the UFOs are powered by the mind, not any propulsion system.
Right.
I'm not. I think the physical machines may not be, but who's to say there are not similar type aircraft or spacecraft in the the alternate reality? Maybe they still need some kind of a physical machine to get you from point A to point B, but it goes a lot faster when you're in the astral world.
See, leave it to me to muddy the water.
and most people would still not be able to see it unless they were in the astral world. So
right.
it still does that.
Got to take a time out. We'll come back. Jason Quitt, Bob Mitchell. The book is Forbidden Knowledge, Revelations of a Multidimensional Time Traveler. There's more right after this.
The Conspiracy Show with Richard Serra.
We are back. Jason Quitt is a multidimensional time traveler, and he and co-author Bob Mitchell have penned a new book just out this spring, March, I think it was, and it is Forbidden Knowledge, Revelations of a Multidimensional Time Traveler. We're talking astral travel, astral projection, astral abductions, entities met on the astral plane, and the parallels between this and the sort of the modern UFO and ET abduction events. And Jason, I want to come back to you, and I think it was actually Victor Vigiani who has said this on my program many times, and that is when we finally figure out, what's going on with UFOs or who's piloting them, it'll probably be nothing we've even thought about or even considered. I mean, we're focused on, the cliche little green men from a distant planet, but who knows? I think Victor said, who knows? They could be time travelers, and which certainly seems to be sort of in line with what you're saying, because, obviously, much of what you discuss is wrapped up in reincarnation and the idea that, at one time we may have been Palladians or reptoids or insectoids in another life. Is that right?
That's correct.
That's correct.
And do you have a sense, or you have knowledge of who you were in terms of extraterrestrial species in another life? Were you a Palladian? Were you a Reptoid? Were you all of them? Were you a Gray?
I would say everyone that you've mentioned, I have memories of.
You have memories of being a Gray.
Yeah, so what I'm saying is that we play all the roles. Like, consciousness is eternal, it's infinite, and we are out there, even as I'm sitting here, even as you're sitting there, you're actually living multiple existences. So even, Richard is here, but Richard is also a Palladian, or Richard is also an Arcturian, or even beyond. See, we have these names which are very close in our solar system and galaxy, but we don't even know how many trillions of planetary systems and civilizations there are.
Right. And we're also living out multiple timelines, correct?
And multi-universes.
Right.
Which all have dimensions.
That is mind-blowing, isn't it?
It's quite vast.
There's a million Richard Serrets out there right now talking about a conspiracy show.
Geez, isn't one plenty?
I know.
It's a fascinating concept, and I love the idea because, imagine though that means in another universe, in another timeline, for example, John Lennon escaped the assassin's bullet, and the Beatles are still out there making albums. I mean,
absolutely.
This is. I mean,
well, that's true, and the albums are not very good.
That's right. They never should have got back together.
But
I mean, this is not pie in the sky, crazy stuff. Theoretical physicists talk about this stuff all the time, and they're there's a theoretical physicist, and again, a senior moment, his name escapes me, but he's talking about developing a quantum computer that will prove the multiverse theory.
Is that Michio Kaku?
No, it wasn't Michio. It's not Kaku, but there's another. I think he's at Oxford, and his name will come to me at some point, probably at 3:00 this morning, and I'll sit upright in bed and remember it and shout it out. But
you see, what we just talked about, for the average person, and I consider myself the average person, it's so mind-boggling to even try to comprehend that most people will just shut it down and say, can't possibly be true, that's really far-fetched. But what if it is true? And that's where you have to always leave that little door open, because the world we live in may not be exactly the world we think it is, and it could be just a small part of the overall world. The fact that if we are living multi-existence at the same time, that is something that you'd really have a hard time to get your head around. But you say, it's a theory and it's a possibility.
Right.
And who's going to prove you wrong? Who's going to prove you right? It's like...
Well, as I say, one day maybe we will have solid scientific proof for the existence of the multiverse, and it's all wrapped up in the development of this quantum computer. I'm wondering, I mentioned Russell Targ earlier, and of course the remote viewing program, and our Cold War adversaries at the time, the Soviets, were also working on a remote viewing program. Theirs apparently had a little more sort of nefarious intent. They were actually trying to develop psychic assassins.
Yeah.
However, when something like this breaks through into the public consciousness, it's always an indicator that, one, it's been going on far longer than we've been told, and two, they're much further ahead in these developments that we've been. I'm wondering, for example, with your ability, Jason, have you ever been, I don't know if you can even discuss this publicly, but have you been approached by intelligence groups or the military or some other think tank interested in your skills and how they might be employed for the benefit of a particular organization, nation, state, what have you?
I'll answer it this way. There is such things as I'd say remote viewers that come to watch you speak, and there's also I'll say like astral assassins that are sent to you. So there is a world out there that still exists, and there's still people that are employed and do this.
But you personally haven't been approached?
No, not by any government agency.
Okay, not by a government agency. All right. I can read between the lines. All right. So you mentioned, that these psychic assassins exist. And actually there was, I'm trying to remember the publication, but they did talk about these choking experiments they did in the Soviet Union where one agent was able to asphyxiate, didn't kill the other person, but from a remote distance. He actually focused on choking this person, and the person, collapsed. So this seems to be possible. But you've had an actual incident where you were speaking. I think you were talking about Tesla, Nikola Tesla's inventions and so forth. And then you came under psychic attack. When did that happen?
That happened last May. So about a month before the first ACE conference. And
Alien Cosmic Expo, ACE.
Alien Cosmic Expo, yes. And basically I gave a talk about Tesla and Akhenaten and the Earth grid that powers the pyramids and the ley lines and all this fun stuff. And I got into extra-dimensional stuff and ancient wars and how they use the Earth grid to create weather modification weapons and, all these fun topics. But even my wife was there, and she's very gifted and psychic, and she saw these astral beings come into the talk. No one else could see them. And
they walked in like anyone else, like in attendance. They walked in.
That's right, but most people can't see them.
Right.
Because they're in, I would say, the astral.
Right.
And she said she witnessed them attack me or do something to me. And almost immediately after that talk, I started to get these very physical symptoms. I started to get these hives on my arm, and it eventually spread to my whole body. And basically, it felt like all the life was taken from me. I basically laid in bed for a month. I couldn't eat. I couldn't get up and walk around. I was in excruciating pain. And even my vision went. My eyes, I couldn't see. So I was declining very fast. And I went to every doctor, and I got blood tests, and you name it, they ran it. And basically, they were just scratching their head, telling me that there's nothing wrong with me, and it's a medical anomaly. They just don't understand it. So I knew that it was an energetic attack, or I would say an energetic poisoning. And luckily, I have a lot of good friends that are shamans and healers. And I thought I could do it myself, but I eventually called one of them, and they did a healing on me, and the next day I got better. So, so I'm very lucky, but I think all these things are lessons that, yes, this stuff exists, and there's certain lines you don't cross.
Right.
So I've learned my lesson.
Have you developed, arguably we might be crossing a few lines tonight. Are you now schooled in the art of spiritual self-defense? I
would say so. And I would say that I've been under attack for 15 years, continually. Every couple months something will come and wake me up that's not a very nice thing. And I've gotten to a point where I could handle myself.
How about you, Bob? Now that you're associated with Jason, has anything odd, unusual happened to you? Because I find that once you get you're connected to somebody else's world, you're in for a penny, you're in for a pound.
Odd. Not odd in the sense that I feel I've been attacked or anything like that. we talked a little bit about last night on Coast to Coast about how I didn't really understand crystals before, and Jason has one of the crystals as part of his healing practice that he has, and there's apparently, which I didn't know, there's a worldwide presence about people all over the world believe that crystals and precious stones have this tremendous healing power.
Oh, it's huge. It's a huge industry.
Yeah. And again, it has to do with the third and fourth dimension. In this dimension, they look like nice-looking, pretty rocks. In very higher dimensions, they are living entities. We just can't see them in this dimension. So they have these great spiritual healing powers. And as I mentioned, I kept seeing people come up to our booth at the Toronto Health Show, and people were grabbing these crystals, and they all were very knowledgeable about which crystal it was, and they'd grab them, and they'd close their eyes, and they'd spread their arms out and look up to the ceiling, and they were having a religious experience. And all this was very strange to me, and even though I wrote about it in the book, I basically wrote about it from Jason's perspective, not really having any grounding on this whole topic. But I wanted to try to experience it, so he told me to hold one crystal in one hand and one crystal in the other hand, and breathe in from the left hand and breathe out to the right hand, and I did that a few times. Had no experience whatsoever, didn't feel anything, and really didn't give it another thought. And then half an hour later, my left shoulder started aching, and it really felt like somebody had broken my shoulder. And I knew what that pain was like because I had broken my right shoulder once. So it was the same kind of feeling that it hurt so bad, and then it got worse as the night went on. And by the end of the night, when I had to drive home to Brantford from downtown Toronto, I basically had to use my right hand to pull my left hand up under the steering wheel and use my right hand to do the turn signal. Very painful. Went home, did a Tylenol 3, got up the next morning, very painful still. In fact, it probably felt worse. No idea where this pain came from because I hadn't lifted anything heavier than the book that I was signing autographs for. And in fact, by the Sunday, I had to have Jason actually lift the book up for me.
Oh, dear.
And it was so painful. And he explained that we have these physical bodies and we have this energetic body. And the energetic body is basically our past lives and our past trauma. And I had to get rid of a trauma that happened in a past life, and there was a blockage. And this sort of said to him that in one of my past lives, I probably broke my arm or broke my shoulder on that side.
All right, I got to jump in here. Got to take a time out. We'll come back. We'll pick up on that. Jason Quitt and Bob Mitchell. Forbidden Knowledge, Revelations of a Multidimensional Time Traveler. Right here on The Conspiracy Show. Stay with us.
Where there's smoke, there's The Conspiracy Show with Richard Serra.
Welcome back to The Conspiracy Show. Bob Mitchell and Jason Quitt, co-authors of Forbidden Knowledge, Revelations of a Multidimensional Time Traveler, with us tonight for the full 2 hours. So, Bob, you were talking about being at the Toronto Health Show. You were sort of learning for the first time about the power of crystals and so forth. Nothing happened. Then later that day, into the evening, into the next day, tremendous shoulder and arm pain. And Jason explained to you that this was quite likely an injury suffered in a past life that had caused a blockage. So what did you do a regression or what happened?
No, he just said it would eventually go away in a couple of days. And sure enough, in a couple of days it went away. There was no pain whatsoever. The rational mind tells me I have no idea what happened. But the mind that I've learned to accept things from Jason is that it's exactly like he said, that was a past trauma that I needed to get rid of.
Right. Have you thought about past regression therapy? Because, I mean, I've witnessed that, and I am conflicted by it, as I've explained many times. There's
an incident in my past about a possible UFO encounter that I want to find out whether one way or another if it happened or not. And I've sort of tentatively made arrangements with Leslie Mitchell Clark to have her do it for me.
Right.
And we may actually do it on a live TV show.
You can do a regression.
Yeah, just to see, what happened, if anything. And if nothing happens, then that's great. But
and if something happened, Bob, are you prepared?
I think I am. Well, I'm much more prepared now than I would have been 3 or 4 years ago.
Sure.
Put it that way. I understand a lot more things than I did 3 or 4 years ago. So I'm actually looking forward to it. So we'll see if it happens or not. I don't know if you want me to tell the story.
Yeah, let's take a few minutes and do that. And then we've got the big announcement for you two.
Sure.
Okay.
Well, it was about, I would say, 10, 15 years ago now. And my wife and I lived in Oakville, down near in the Bronte area. And I was still working for the Star at the time. And she was working as a medical technician for assisted living center. And she had the late shift, and I had just the normal shift. And it was in the summertime, and we crossed paths about midnight, and she was staying up to watch some TV. I went to bed because I had to get up early in the morning. And about 3 o'clock in the morning, she comes and frantically wakes me up out of bed and says, "You got to come into the living room and look up in the sky." And so I remember her waking me up, and I remember going out into the living room. And that's where it gets a little foggy to me, because she says she opened the blind and pointed up into the sky, where she says there was this beam of light that was breaking through the clouds, and it was like a really strange beam of light. Like it was a directional beam, and it just went right up into the clouds. And this is pitch black, so it's 3 o'clock in the morning. But at the same time, it feels as if there's a tornado all around our house. And I remember that. I don't remember looking out the window, but I remember the tornado-like feeling. And our garbage cans out front were just rolling all over the place. And the patio furniture out back in the backyard, it was going crazy. So my wife went out the front to get the garbage cans, and I remember stepping outside into the backyard to get the patio furniture. And I clearly remember that. And when I stepped outside, it seemed to be bright as daylight. And that part I remembered. For some reason, I didn't look up. No idea why, but I remember grabbing the furniture. I remember feeling as if I'm in this tremendous tornado like Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz. But I don't feel cold. I don't feel hot. It's just this wind, this incredible wind. It's not blowing me anywhere, but it's blowing all the furniture. And
that's
so
odd.
I'm grabbing the furniture, and I remember that. And then my wife says she came into the backyard and asked me if I needed any help. I don't remember that, but I do remember getting all the furniture and then turning around and coming back into the house. And in my mind, I went right back to bed. She says we went to the couch and talked about this experience, this wind, this strange thing. It was like something out of like a movie.
Almost sounds like you were in a trance, Bob.
Well, the thing is, back then I wasn't very much of a light sleeper. The slightest thing woke me up. But,
right.
For that night, I wasn't. So I get up the next morning, and the first thing I think about in my mind was that a dream that I had last night? It was so real, but it just seemed really bizarre. And I remember, I had to go to work, so I didn't really talk to my wife till after I got off work. But I remember seeing my neighbors outside, and I said, that was some storm we had last night. And they said, what storm? And I said,
oh my.
Everything was blowing everywhere. And they said, I didn't hear any of that. So I went to work and...
I gotta jump in here. Apologies. We'll pick up on this when we come back. That is a bizarre story. All right, we'll come back.
It's a little better.
Bob Mitchell, Jason Quitt, and the book is Forbidden Knowledge: Revelations of a Multidimensional Time Traveler. Right here on the Conspiracy Show. Don't touch that dial.
Beaming across North America, The Conspiracy Show with Richard Serra.
All right, we are back now. Bob Mitchell, let's pick up on this remarkable story. So you and your lovely bride living in Oakville, you see this bright light in the sky. There seems to be an accompanying whirlwind, almost like a tornado or a storm. Very windy. You go out, you're wrangling the lawn furniture, which is being blown around, and the garbage cans and so forth. The next day, you talk to a neighbor and you say, that was some storm last night. And they say, what are you talking about? Okay, so let's pick up this story from there.
So I'm thinking it must have been a dream, and because I haven't talked to my wife yet.
Right.
So when she does come home that night, I says, I had the strangest dream last night. And she says, that wasn't a dream. He says, we sat here and talked about it. And so I don't really have any memory of this. So I'm thinking, well, that was really strange. And like nobody else seemed to know about it. And for some reason, we just sort of didn't talk about it anymore. It wasn't something that was on our mind, and I don't even know if we ever even told our kids or relatives or anything. It just didn't. It wasn't important to us anymore.
Isn't that strange?
And then, lo and behold, I guess it was a couple of years ago now, when I was starting to write these UFO books, and we were just sitting around one day, and I don't know if we had been watching Ancient Aliens on TV or I had just been doing an interview for the book, but the topic came up and we started talking about that night. And for the very first time, when I said to her that I was outside and she came back to see if I wanted anything, she said to me that she didn't see a yellow light. She said I was engulfed in a bluish light, bluish-white light. Almost everybody that I've ever talked to always describes this bluish-white light that they found themselves involved in before they were beamed somewhere.
Oh, dear.
And Travis Walton himself told me that he was a bluish-white light. So that got me thinking, it's the same thing. My wife says I didn't go anywhere. And like she'll insist that I didn't leave the house, and I was always in the bed for the whole night.
Although you have no memories of the conversation on the couch after, the debriefing, if you will. So
yeah, no memories, and so I'm anxious to be taken back to that night to just find out one way or another.
So you're going to undergo a regression. So you're
I absolutely have no memory of anything happening other than what I told you.
Well, perhaps Mrs. Mitchell needs to consider a regression as well.
Maybe, but we'll see first if it happens for me. It was supposed to happen by now, but they're having trouble getting a studio to do all this. So,
all right.
But that's my big UFO story, and I don't know whether it's true or not, but it would...
well, something happened. There's no question something happened.
Something happened. I just don't know what it was.
All right. So we teased off the top about this a big announcement. So Jason Quitt, Bob Mitchell, here you are. You've just, within the last several months, released Forbidden Knowledge, Revelations of a Multidimensional Time Traveler, and already you're hard at work on some other projects, and that's the big announcement. What's going on?
Yeah, it's our biggest project yet, I'm sure, and everybody's talking about disclosure. In fact, Stephen Bassett predicted at the Alien Cosmic Expo that President Obama would have disclosure before he left office. And I'm not betting that'll happen, but even if it does happen, I can probably assure everybody that whatever he says, it's only going to be bare bones stuff, and it's not going to appease anybody, and you're not going to be much further off than you were before.
I'm with you. We're not going to get the big announcement from the Rose Garden saying, yes, E.T. is here. It's not going to happen.
Not going to happen. So we ended up getting in touch with a man who is known to many people, but it's not the same guy, and his name is John Titor. People will remember him from 2000 or remember a John Titor from the year 2000 claiming to come here, and he was looking for some material that was in a computer, and he had to go back to the year 2036 to fix it, and along the way he made some predictions that never came true.
Right. This was caused a huge stir, and certainly on Coast to Coast. Was he? He may have been interviewed by Art Bell. I'm not sure.
Yeah. Well, that John Titor apparently was, but the person we've run into, who calls himself John Titor II, assures us that wasn't him and that was an imposter, and he has no idea who that person was or why that person even pretended to be him.
He was the forerunner.
The forerunner.
John.
Yeah. But so our book is called Disclosed, with an ED, The Chronicles of John Titor II. And we don't want to say too much about what's in the book yet because we're hoping, planning to have it out by September 30th. But let me just say, people should prepare to have their mind blown. The John Titor II that we are talking to was a very high-ranking person in a very top secret unit, black budget unit, basically, of the United States Air Force that was involved in time travel, alien interaction, and was based at Area 51. And so through John's stories about what happened, what he experienced, we're going to let the world know what really is going on with disclosure and what you'll never find out from the real disclosure, because it's just too, what's the word, Jason? Too real?
Too real. Or too surreal.
Well, I guess it's too surreal. I think people are going to say, I knew it. I knew that was what the case was, and other people are just going to be, oh, my God.
Why don't we just call it a real wake-up call?
Sure. Yeah, it's certainly a wake-up call. So that's why we've called it Disclosed, because he's going to disclose everything he possibly can. There are some things he couldn't tell us, and he's still, in some ways, connected with this very high-ranking group. And we're basically telling everybody who actually is running the United States and why the president may not necessarily be the head guy. Some presidents have had more say than other presidents. But if anything, it's going to be an interesting and informative and entertaining read, put it that way.
All right. I don't want to give too much away, and I don't know how much you're at liberty to say, but I'm going to plumb a little deeper, and then if you want to say no comment,
Sure.
Comment is what it will be. How did John Titor II, this time traveler, highly placed formerly in the United States Air Force, let's call it a black ops project, how did he come to your attention? How did he make himself known to you?
That started with Jason. And it actually started before Jason because we've been on many, many late-night talk shows. And one of the questions that always comes up is, do you know John Titor? And at the time, we didn't. So Jason went to see if he could track him down. And you did, right, Jay?
Yeah, I tracked him down, and I got his phone number, and we started to talk on the phone. And we actually shared some pretty similar stories from different timelines.
Right.
So I said, you have to talk to Bob. So I got Bob in touch with him, and the rest is history. I think we've been spending a good 5 hours a week talking to him for the past couple of months.
I think maybe it's about 6 hours a week.
Yeah, so we've been in touch with him for quite a while, and the things that he's revealed to us is quite amazing, actually.
Why now? Why does he feel he's able to speak? Why does he want to disclose now and to you?
I don't know if we could answer that question.
I don't think we can answer that directly. That may be in the last chapter of the book. We haven't got to the last chapter yet, but I think I can tell you that the time traveling that he's done has taken a toll on him, and he wants to get these things out in the open before he dies, basically.
Okay, I'm going to ask another question that you may or may not choose to answer. Mm-hmm. Now that you've teased us, I must yank on these threads, otherwise my audience would have me hanging by my feet somewhere. But is this at all related to Project Pegasus? Andrew Bishego has been on this program. He's a noted, refers to himself as a time-traveling whistleblower. Yep. Is it related to Project Pegasus?
No. I would say no.
No, it's not.
In fact, John has given us some interesting information about, Mars and other planets that the U.S., secret space program is supposed to have gone to. And people are going to be a little surprised about John's take on the whole thing. But as John says to us over and over again, he knows only a slice of the pie. In the kind of position he was in, everything is compartmentalized.
Right.
So it's always on a need-to-know basis. And they told him what he needed to know to complete his missions, but they didn't tell him anything else. So he doesn't have any actual experience with Project Pegasus or that type of stuff. But what he has seen, and there's a chapter about Mars in it. It's a little different than what Andrew Bashego has said.
Right. I guess one final question on this note,
Sure.
and that is the time travel that we're talking about involving John Titor II. Is this an astral type time travel, or are we talking about an actual device that can transcend time and space?
A device.
A device.
Yeah, his is not like Jason. So while Jason has experienced time traveling in that division and the dimensions that he has, none of John's experiences happened in an altered state. It's a physical thing that happens.
And you believe him because?
I believe him because, well, it's a tough question because it's like, do you believe in extraterrestrials? Well, I haven't seen an extraterrestrial, but I still believe in them.
Well, obviously he said things to you that
He says things to us that make sense, put it that way.
All right.
And there's nothing he hasn't said to us that I will say is, well, that's completely out of the, that's completely both. I mean, there's nothing along that line.
All right. Well, we look forward to Disclosed.
Yeah. September 30th.
September 30th. All right. We will have you back on the program. Both of you. Jason Quitt, Bob Mitchell, thank you so much for spending 2 hours
We'll have
with
John
us.
Titor on the program, too.
Now that, my friend, is a date. Can't wait. Cannot wait. All right.
Yes.
We are done for the night. My thanks to young Will. Will, what is your last name? Are you serious? Willpower. That's a great name. Ian Robertson, Albert Vinzel, all of you to listening at home. Back next week with a brand new program. In the meantime, don't be afraid. There's nothing concealed that won't be revealed. Nothing hidden that won't be made known. What you hear in the dark, speak in the light. What I say in a whisper, proclaim from the housetops. Move over, Aphrodite. I'm coming home.